"Get your tools and get off my site." Dale Bronner said it loud, the way a man says a thing he wants the whole crew to carry home. "Some of us actually work for a living." The lift had stopped 40 feet up with 2 men in the basket, and Marcus Webb was the one who'd called the hold, called it because the outrigger on the north side had settled 2 inches into ground that hadn't been compacted right, and he'd felt it in the deck plate under his boots the way you feel a floor go soft. He'd stopped the pour. He'd been right to stop the pour. And Dale Bronner had come across the pad red to the ears, and now 40 men stood in the July heat and watched the foreman fire the quiet one in front of God and everybody. Marcus didn't argue. He set down the level, called the cord slow, and looked at Dale for a moment with a stillness that a smarter man would have read as a warning. But what none of them standing on that slab knew, not Dale, not the crew filming it on their phones, was whose name had been on the closing paper signed 9 days before, in an office 30 miles away, buying the whole company out from under all of them. Marcus Webb was 54, and to everyone on the Bronner construction crew he was a fill-in, a temp laborer who'd shown up 3 weeks back when they were short-handed on the medical center job, quiet, older, good with a level, kept to himself at lunch. Nobody asked him anything. That was how Marcus had wanted it. A man learns more about a company from the inside of it in 3 weeks than from a year of audited statements, and the statements had already told him plenty. He read a job site the way other men read a newspaper. The way the rebar was tied. The way the safety binder had entries in it that had never happened. The way Dale Bronner ran his crews hard and cut the corners that don't show until a slab cracks or a man falls, and Marcus had watched, and said nothing, and tightened his own work 1 notch, and waited. He had learned to read a site from a man named Walter Reese. Walter had run a 3-man masonry outfit out of a cinderblock garage on the east side, 40 years ago, and had taken a skinny angry 16-year-old with a court date and no father and put a trowel in his hand instead of letting him drift. Walter was gone now, 11 years, a heart that quit him on a Sunday, but Marcus could still hear him. Walter had a way of pressing his thumb into a fresh joint and saying the thing he said about everything. Asterisk build it like your name's already carved in it. Because it is star. He'd said it about mortar and he'd said it about men. He'd handed Marcus, at the end, a steel mason's level 1 silver at the edges from 40 years of Walter's hands, the bubble still true, and told him a level doesn't take sides, it just tells you the truth about whether you built it straight. Marcus had carried that level onto every job of his life. It was in his bag on the Bronner pad the day Dale fired him. It went where he went. Marcus had built himself up quiet, the way Walter built a wall, 1 true course at a time. Masonry to contracting, contracting to development, and somewhere in the last decade into the thing nobody on a job site ever pictures, the man who buys the companies. He owned pieces of 11 of them now. He wore the same canvas coat he'd worn at 30. And when his acquisition group had flagged Bronner Construction, undervalued, overleveraged, a founder owner ready to retire and cash out, Marcus had done what he always did before he signed. He went and stood on the ground himself. He didn't tell them who he was. He put on his belt and picked up his level and went to work as a temp, because paper lies and a job site can't, and in 3 weeks the Bronner job had told him everything the spreadsheet couldn't. It had told him about Dale Bronner. Dale acted the first time on Marcus's second day. A young laborer, Terence, 20 and new, had asked a fair question about fall protection on the leading edge, and Dale had answered him in front of 6 men in a way that made the boy small. "This isn't community college, son, we build here," and the crew had laughed because you laugh with the foreman or you're next. Marcus had watched Terence's face close up, and after, he'd walked over and shown the kid the right way to clip off, quiet, no audience, and said, "Question was a good one. Ask it again to me next time." Terence had looked at him like nobody on that site had spoken to him straight in a month. Dale acted the second time a week later, and this time it cost. There was a discrepancy in the safety log, an inspection signed off that Marcus knew for a fact hadn't happened, because he'd been standing on that exact deck at that exact hour and no inspector had come. He'd mentioned it, madly, to the site super. It got back to Dale within the day. Dale docked Marcus a half shift for slowing the crew with questions, and made sure to say it where men could hear, and Marcus had taken it with a flat "all right" and gone back to work. And only in his truck that evening had he let his hands do what they wanted, which was shake, because composure is a thing you spend and it is never free. He'd sat in the cab and taken the level out of his bag and set it on the dash and watched the bubble sit dead center, true, while everything Dale Bronner touched leaned. Then came the pour, and the soft ground, and Marcus calling the hold, and Dale, humiliated in front of his crew by a temp who turned out to be right, reaching for the only thing that had ever made him feel tall. Process. The power to end a man's day. You're done, Dale said on the slab. Off my sight. Don't come back. And here is the thing the audience needs to sit in, because Marcus sat in it too, he could have ended it right there. He had, folded in the truck 30 feet away, a corporate resolution that made Dale Bronner an employee of a company Marcus Webb controlled. He could have said the word and watched the man's face come apart on the spot. He didn't. Walter hadn't raised him to swing before the wall was ready. Marcus picked up his bag, and his level, and he walked off the pad past 40 silent men, and the last thing he did before he reached his truck was catch Terence's eye and give the boy a small nod, the kind that says watch what happens next. That night was the low one anyway, because doing a thing right and slow doesn't make it painless. Marcus sat at his kitchen table with the closing binder on one side and Walter's level on the other, and he thought about the fact that he'd let a man erase him in front of a crew and walked away wearing it, at 54, with more money than Walter ever dreamed and less dignity than he'd had at 16 with a trowel. He turned the level in his hands. Build it like your name's already carved in it. His name was carved in it, carved on the deed to the whole company, and he stood there and let Dale Bronner tell 40 men he didn't work for a living. He didn't sleep much. But somewhere in the dark the shake left his hands, and what was left underneath it was steady, and he knew what Monday looked like. He didn't do it by ambush. He did it by procedure, because procedure done right is the only justice that holds up when the lawyers come. He called the transition council. He called the founder, old Ray Bronner, Dale's uncle, the retiring owner, a decent enough man who'd let his nephew run wild, and told him plainly what he'd seen on the site, the falsified safety logs, the docked wages, the settled outrigger nearly poured over. Ray Bronner went quiet on the phone for a long time. I always worried about that in him, the old man finally said. And Marcus told him the level of things, and what would happen Monday, and asked one thing of the founder, be in the room. Let the crew see the old name and the new name agree. He asked Terence for one thing too. The boy had filmed the firing on his phone the way half the crew had, but Terence had also, weeks back, when Dale docked Marcus, quietly saved the corrected safety log before Dale could bury the original, because something about the older temp had made him want a witness. Marcus didn't ask him to lie or to swing. He asked him to bring what was already true to a meeting Monday morning. You saw it straight, Marcus said. That's all I need. Same as you asked the good question. Ask it again, out loud, where it counts. Monday, they gathered the crew in the side trailer, the same double-wide where Dale ran his morning huddles, the same room where he told Terence this wasn't community college. Ray Bronner stood at the back. The transition council stood by the door with a folder. And Marcus Webb walked in wearing the same canvas coat, and Dale Bronner looked at the term he'd fired on Friday standing at the front of his trailer on Monday and started to say something about trespassing. Marcus set Walter's level on the table between them, flat, and the bubble sat true. Mr. Bronner, he said it even. 9 days ago, a holding company acquired 100% of Bronner Construction. I control that company. Ray sold it. You work for me. Or you did. The trailer went so quiet you could hear the window unit tick. He didn't gloat. He laid it out the way Walter laid a course. He set down the closing resolution, signed and dated, chain of custody clean, Ray's signature, his own. He set down the safety binder with the inspection signed off for a day Marcus could prove no inspector came, and Terence, from the back, said in a voice that shook only a little, I saved the real log before it got changed. It's on here. I'll swear to it, he set down the 2 docked pay slips. He didn't raise his voice once. Each sheet was a curse, and the wall went up between Dale Bronner and every excuse he had, and there was nothing procedural cruelty could do against paper that was simply, verifiably true. You falsified safety records on a live pour, Marcus said. You docked a man's wages for reporting it. Friday you nearly let a slab go over a settled outrigger and fired the person who stopped it. Any one of those ends your employment for cause. All three earned it today. He looked at the counsel, who stepped forward with the letter. This is your termination. It's done right, so it holds. You'll be walked to your truck. The mirror of it landed on the whole crew at once. The foreman who'd matched the quiet man of the pad now walked to the door past the same faces, and nobody laughed, and nobody moved, because they'd all seen the folder in the man's hand. One of them, a big iron worker named Sam who'd laughed loudest Friday, was looking at the floor, his ears red, and when Marcus caught his eye, Sam couldn't hold it. The crowd had turned. The audience's own shame, written on a man's face. Dale Bronner's mouth worked. You set me up, he said. You came in undercover and set me up. No, Marcus's voice didn't rise. This was the dagger, and he laid it down soft. I came in and did the job. You did the rest yourself. I just watched, he nodded to the door. That's the difference between us, Mr. Bronner. I built the case straight. You handed me every course of it. That was the only flourish he allowed himself, and then he was done, and the room did the rest. The grace came where nobody expected it, because Walter's kind of man doesn't kick a man who's already down the stairs. Dale left with his legal consequences intact. The safety falsification went to the state board, because men's lives ride on those logs and Marcus would not bury it any more than Dale should have. But Marcus never released Terence's video of the Friday firing, never let the crew make a spectacle of the man on the internet, never said one word to shame him past what the paper already said. I won't do to you in front of a crowd what you did to me, he told Dale at the truck, just the two of them. You'll answer for the logs, because that's the law. But I'm not going to make you small. I know what that cost a man. I'll spend the rest of my life not doing it. He made Terence a foreman in training before the month was out, the 20-year-old who'd asked the good question and saved the true log, and paired him with the best super on the payroll. Ray Bronner shook Marcus's hand and said his uncle-grandfather had been a bricklayer too, and the two old men stood in the trailer a while and talked about mortar. Sam the iron worker came up at the end, hat in his hands, and said, I laughed Friday. I'm not proud of it, Marcus said. You're here Monday, standing straight and saying so. That counts. Get back to work, and Sam did, and stood a little straighter the rest of that year. 6 months on, the company had a new name over the trailer door and a foundation running out of the front office, the Water Race Trade Fund, that took kids with court dates and no fathers and put trowels and tape measures in their hands the way one old mason once did for one angry boy. Terence ran his first crew that spring. On the wall of the main office, mounted in a plain glass case where every worker passed it coming in, hung a steel mason's level 1 silver at the edges, its bubble still dead true, with a small brass plate under it that carried the only words water ever needed. Asterisk build it like your name's already carved in it. Because it is star. Marcus passed it every morning. Some mornings he'd stop, and press his thumb to the glass the way Walter used to press it into a fresh joint, and go on into work, the same canvas coat, the same steady hands, the man who owned the building still building it one true course at a time. If you've ever held your tongue while someone tried to erase you, and waited, and let the truth arrive on its own weight, tell us about it in the comments. We read every one. The moral is as plain as a level line. Talent and worth live everywhere, in every coat and on every crew, and prejudice is just a blindfold a small man wears to feel tall. Dignity doesn't shout and doesn't grovel, it builds itself straight and lets the crooked thing fall on its own. Who was the first person who believed in you before you'd earned it, the one who put the tool in your hand? Tell us below. If this story stood you up a little straighter, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And wherever you're standing right now, on whatever ground they've told you that you don't belong, may you build it true, may your patience outlast their contempt, and may you live to see your name in the wall you were told you'd never lay a stone in.